Hey guys, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Megan Hardy, and I am the founder of Fitness Uncharted, which is my fitness and nutrition coaching company that I designed to help women build muscle, lose fat, improve your metabolism, and have complete food freedom. And today we are talking about sweets and food addictions and what to do if you feel like you have a sugar addiction. Or this also will apply to if you feel like you have some kind of food addiction in general. But we're going to be talking a little bit more on the sweets side of things because I got an email from a listener about this, and it was a very lengthy email, really going into an explanation of her kind of sugar addiction. And so we're going to be addressing that directly. And when I was responding to her, I sent her a video back because I was like, this is too much for me to just type out in an email. Let me send you a quick video talking you through this. And I was like, literally, if I'm sending her a video to talk this through, I need to probably put this in a podcast episode because what I found from experience of doing this and working with clients, when someone has a question, there's probably more than one person who has that same question. And there's probably many people who have that same question. So I was like, if I can help her in response and answer this for her, there's probably other people that would benefit from this, especially those of you who listen to the podcast. And personally, I have a major sweet tooth, you guys. Like my brother and I joke that, well, it's more so me joking. But anyway, I made the joke and I laugh at my own jokes. But say that I stole his sweet tooth, like in utero. Like as a baby, somehow I got his sweet tooth because I have two sweet teeth, and he doesn't have any. Like he could care less about sweets. And I'm like, oh my gosh, give me all the sweets. When someone says something is super rich or super decadent, I'm like, this is like children's play. I could have a whole pan of this. Like I love sweets. So I can relate to this for sure. I'm sure others of you can. And sugar is so present in our diet and culture today that I imagine a lot of people can relate and maybe struggle with this. And maybe your thing isn't sugar. Maybe yours is salt. Like maybe yours is, which salt is not bad for you, by the way, but there's different versions. Depending on whole food versus processed food, mineralized salt, that kind of stuff. We're not talking about that today exactly, but the principles I'm going to share in this episode will also help if you feel like you have some other type of food addiction, or hopefully they help. So hopefully you can take away some nuggets from this, whether or not your thing is sweets. So I do want to just read her email. It's a little lengthy, but I feel like the context really helps, and then we can kind of respond to this and answer it. So her email said, she said, "Hey, Megan, I have a question for you. I have been re listening to your episodes recently and have been thinking a lot about food freedom and that you have talked a lot about it. I was the kid that grew up with very little sweets and in the house, but was always trying to get my hands on them. Sprinkles, chocolate chips, 7 Up, saved for upset stomachs only. And I even took a bunch of vitamin C once and hid them in a plastic Easter egg in my room. I'm currently working with an online coach on my fitness journey, and the sweets are still my biggest obstacle. I couldn't care less about chips and other snacks, just the sweets. I hear a lot that people can get to the point where they can have a little bit of chocolate or other treats each day and still reach their goals. I would love to get to the point where I can just have a little bit and be satisfied. The other day, my husband brought home some apple fritter donut holes, and I told myself I could just have one or two and be satisfied. Well, that turned into 20. No joke. My online coach told me that it seems like I may have more of a sugar addiction problem. And the best way to combat that is to just avoid sweets because the more we eat sugar, the more we crave it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic, as this mentality is probably not going to work for me. When I try to restrict sugar, then it perpetuates the binge restrict cycle even more. But even if I try to just have a small amount of sweets every day, still knowing I can have more tomorrow, I almost always go overboard. Do you have any suggestions? Sorry for the long-winded email. And first, I just have to say, never apologize for a long-winded message or long-winded email to me. That actually helps a lot. Like the more information is better than not enough information when you're trying to get feedback or advice, whether that's from me or someone else, because we need that context. And that allows me to be more specific in my feedback. And even still, there's so much I don't know about this person that I gave her feedback, and with the caveat that I'm not working with you as your one-on-one coach. This is not one of my clients. So I'm like, I can give you feedback, but I don't know the nuances of your life and your relationship with food and things like that. That stuff we get to know better when we're working with a client and we have that open, honest, conversation and rapport and relationship, right? But the context she gave me is helpful and a starting point. So I was able to give her some feedback. But also, this is a conversation I would definitely be having with your coach if you're listening to this, or if you're a different listener and you've felt this way. Like she said, she was like, I don't know if this mentality or mindset of really cutting everything out is going to work for me. And hopefully she feels like she can have this conversation with her coach. But the fact that she's asking me makes me a little bit concerned that she doesn't feel she can have this open, honest conversation with them. But she probably can, but and just she maybe doesn't realize it's up for discussion. A lot of times when someone's working with a coach, they just think their word goes, right? So maybe she doesn't realize that like she could actually have this conversation with them. And for instance, like I would go to your coach and ask, hey, like this doesn't feel realistic. Like she told me, right? Like I'm not sure if this mindset or mentality of cutting it out is going to work for me. So go to them and say, hey, it doesn't feel realistic, or I'm really still struggling with this, or don't know how to implement this. What other strategies could we try, or what other options are there than just cutting everything out? And if she's working with a good coach, someone who can work with you and not just bark orders at you, but actually realize like, hey, let's figure out how to make this realistic for you, then the coach is gonna be, he or she is gonna be totally receptive to that. And that's where I always like, I try to keep that open relationship with my clients where please bring things to us. Like if you are paying someone and working with someone, that open transparency and conversation is so much more helpful. Help us help you, right? So I just want to say that. So go to your coach, talk to your coach for sure. But like for instance, with our clients, as far as this, this two-way street, like I try to make it very clear to them that this is a partnership. Like, yes, I'm your coach. Yes, there's kind of that like leader follower mentality a little bit, but I want you to take ownership of this, of your journey. And this is a partnership. And we aren't here just to bark orders at them. For example, like one thing for me is alcohol. Like I will be super transparent that you will get better results if you cut back or completely cut out alcohol. You will. Like personally in my own life, I've easily gotten more lean and shredded the less and less alcohol I've had. Now I'm pregnant, so I'm not drinking alcohol at all. But I really like probably drink alcohol this past year before getting pregnant like a handful of times in the year. I just really don't unless there's social occasions. I used to be a binge drinker, and then I used to be, after coming out of binge drinking, I was then like, drinking every weekend, at least twice a weekend, maybe three times a weekend, 3 days, multiple drinks each time. Then it turned to like two, then it turned to more like one day a weekend. And then now it's just like hit or miss. And I've gotten leaner and leaner going into my 30s than I was ever in my 20s. It's pretty cool. Like, so this also really applies to my perimenopausal and menopausal ladies. If you're not seeing the changes you want and you're still not reducing or eliminating alcohol, that's a really easy place to start. But all that being said, this is not an alcohol episode, but I don't force my clients to cut out alcohol. Like, I will not tell them that they have to completely get rid of it or cut it out just for the sake of my program, because I want this to be a sustainable lifestyle for them. And if they're going to drink alcohol after the program, we should go ahead and figure out how to work it into their plan, right? Like, because that's what everyone does with diets. And this is not a diet program. This is a lifestyle program. So that's why when you do Optavia or Weight Watchers or paleo or whatever, and you're so good and you cut everything out, you cut out all sugar, all alcohol, whatever, duh, you're going to lose weight and you're probably going to get leaner and more shredded and things like that. But when you start adding those things back in with no strategy, duh, you're gonna rebound back to the way you were before. So that's where I tell them don't cut things out for the sake of this program. What are you willing to sacrifice? It will take sacrifice, and you will have to pick and choose what you're willing to give up, right? If nothing changes, nothing changes. But you can also still incorporate things like sugar and alcohol into your life, right? But we have to work that in and figure that out. So that's where, if you're working with a coach, it's a partnership. It's not like a, I don't know, slave driver barking orders at you, right? Or it shouldn't be. But for her, she shared, let's get back to the cravings and the addiction conversation. She shared that for her, just quote unquote cutting it all out doesn't feel realistic for her, but neither does quote unquote just have a little bit. And I can 100% relate to this because I still to this day struggle sometimes with the quote unquote just have a little bit. And we'll get to this. This will be my second point, but first I'm going to address something else. But just have a little bit is for someone who really struggles with any kind of food addiction. It's like trying to give an alcoholic a little bit of alcohol. It's okay, just have a little bit. It's just a little bit. It's just one drink. You can't do that with an alcoholic, right? Like think like or a drug addict. It's not just a little bit. Food is very addictive, and our food has been designed and created. It's literally being created in labs these days to be more addictive. So sometimes the principle of why can't you just have a little bit doesn't work, right? So anyway, one thing that you can do, so like her coach recommended, she was like, maybe you just need to remove it. Sounds like there's a little bit of a sugar addiction here. Maybe you just need to cut out sugar for a bit. Or I don't know if she said for a bit, but she said cut out sugar. My suggestion would be if that's something you feel like you could do or that's realistic, is give yourself more of a time frame to cut out or eliminate sugar and see how you feel. And this can do a couple of things. So you could try to remove sugar, say for like 21 days or 30 days or longer, and reset your body's chemistry. So this might look like eating more of like kind of like a paleo diet. So you're really just focused on eliminating like processed foods, which probably have more added sugars and refined sugars and things like that. And then that's going to see like help you see if you stop craving them so much by cutting some of that back. Because when you go through a sugar detox, you're essentially cutting out sources of added sugars and sometimes even cutting out those natural sugars for a period of time. And this can help reset your body's response to sugar in a couple of ways. So the first is your insulin response. This can reduce insulin spikes because when you're consuming very sugary foods, especially those refined sugars, your blood sugar levels are going to spike very quickly. And this triggers insulin to help manage the sugar. And then over time, what happens is this cycle can lead to insulin resistance because of all those sugar spikes. And then you'll have cravings for more sugar. So during a detox, by avoiding sugar, you can give your body kind of a break from those spikes, which can help regulate insulin levels more effectively. So that's one way is like it's that insulin response that we're looking at with eliminating or reducing sugar intake and not having so many of those drastic spikes. And then another thing it can help do is resetting your taste buds. So I actually talked in an interview with Elise Fulop. This was, gosh, I don't know, maybe in the episode 50s or 60s or something like that. Anyway, we talked about her bodybuilding journey and her lifestyle with if it fits your macros versus eating more quality whole foods. And she talked about this as well from her own personal experience and how going more of like a whole food diet approach, not just quote unquote if it fits your macros, but really focusing on whole foods and less processed or added sugars. She literally was like, my taste buds were like reset. And what will happen is sugar can dull your taste buds over time, making you crave sweeter foods to get the same satisfaction. So a sugar detox allows your taste buds to become more sensitive to natural sweetness found in foods like fruits and vegetables, which can help reduce cravings for overly sweetened foods, which literally just think of this, you guys. Like, if you have a sugar addiction, you probably are like, what? Vegetables? Vegetables aren't sweet. What are you talking about? But yes, they can be. They actually are and can be. Some vegetables can be sweet. Think of like a carrot, right? Like that can be actually a sweet vegetable, or certain peas can be on the sweeter side. But if you have a sugar addiction or you just eat a lot of sugar, you probably don't even notice the sweetness. And I've been there myself. I'm kind of like even there right now. I like can kind of tell, but I've also had a lot of sugar. So like, but I notice when I have less processed or added sugars, those foods taste sweeter. And of course, fruits, we naturally think of fruits as being sweet too, right? But then you're making your taste buds more sensitive that, which can help reduce your cravings for those overly sweetened foods. So that's another way that kind of detoxing from sugar can help. And then also it helps with your gut health. So sugar can actually feed certain bacteria in your gut, leading to an imbalance that might contribute to more cravings. So we have our good bacteria and our bad bacteria, and an overdose of sugar just feeds certain bad bacteria. And then we have that imbalance. So cutting out sugar can help rebalance your gut microbiome. And then that plays a really big role in your overall health and can also influence your cravings or lack thereof as well. So that's why it can actually be beneficial, like her coach mentioned, to cut back or eliminate or cut out. But she's got to apply this to her lifestyle and what is going to be realistic for her to actually do. So that's where, I can't give super specific feedback there because I don't know the ins and out for her. But chemically speaking, when you consume sugar, your brain releases dopamine, that good old dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that's associated with pleasure and reward. So we are always looking for those dopamine hits. So that's why we love starting new things. We love sweet treats. We love that, like whatever that makes us feel good, right? It's that dopamine hit and the pleasure and reward center of our brain. And over time, frequent consumption of sugar can lead to a dopamine response that craves more sugar just to maintain that same level of pleasure. That's why with things like literally like sugar or porn, or not to go there, but we're going there, like that's why people, they need more and more, and they need crazier and crazier, like that we need more of whatever that thing is, because that dopamine response kind of gets like dwindles, right? So we need more just to get the same pleasure response. And by detoxing from sugar, you allow your brain's dopamine receptors to reset, reducing the intensity of cravings. So we want to kind of reset those receptors so that we become more receptive when we do have, an increase in dopamine, so that we're not kind of like in this fog where we need more and more and more to get the same response, right? So you could cut out sugar completely for a short time, or you could try more of the paleo approach, where you can still have like natural sugars like fruit, but you're cutting out refined and added sugars. And that's actually something I've been doing recently, is just paying attention. Actually, myself and my clients right now, we're doing like a little bit challenge of minimizing or reducing, not completely eliminating, but reducing our added sugars in food. So I would encourage you, whether you struggle with sugar addictions or not, it'd be beneficial probably to reduce your added sugar intake. Literally just go look anytime you go to make a sandwich or put food in your mouth, look at the label and see how much added sugar is in there, and then kind of set a goal for yourself to stay under a certain amount of added sugars. But there's a reason why, like, you may not even need to cut out all sugars completely. Maybe that does feel too extreme for you, but maybe you just cut out the processed and added and refined sugars. And because there's a reason why a Snickers bar is highly addictive versus, say, something like grapes. Like, most people don't really care to eat, you know, bushels and bushels of grapes. Like, I might have a good serving or two of, like, whatever you call a little tiny bushel, but I'm not going to go eat like the whole bag of grapes from the grocery store. I don't even want it, right? Even being a sweet tooth person, maybe grapes are your thing. But for most people, you're probably not craving the whole bag of grapes. But you give me a Snickers bar and I could eat 3 or 4 of them back to back easily. Or give me a brownie and I could eat the whole pan, right? So, and that's because processed food like that are literally designed to make us crave them more. And it's that wonderful, delicious combination of sugar, salt, and fat that is highly addictive. When you combine those things, you got that sugar, that sweet and salty, and that, higher fat food. Ooh, you just want more of that. It's very, very addictive. Not to mention the more processing and literally things like, I don't know, I think it's Cheetos or Doritos. Like there was studies showing that how they like literally in the lab are like, how can we make this food more addictive? Like, let's make it melt in their mouth so they hardly have to chew it. Think of your favorite chips or your favorite like donuts, those things that just practically melt in your mouth. So you're not even getting the sensation of chewing and feeling full. So it makes you just want more, right? And a lot of those things are high, sugar, salt, and fat content too. So that is one thing you can do. And then I want to talk really quickly on a more anecdotal perspective from personal experience with this and working with clients. And, from my own personal experience with food cravings and having a major, major sweet tooth, like I told you guys, one thing I have learned, and this is where I try to give you the science, but also the application. Like, okay, what really works in real life? Like, what has worked for me, right? This is where knowing yourself. This is my next tip for you: is learn yourself and know yourself. And what I mean by that is like sometimes I, Megan, can have a reasonable amount of chocolate chips, and then sometimes I can't. And I'll eat the whole bag. And let's say, sometimes I can eat cereal in moderation. That's like my kick right now, being pregnant. And sometimes I can't. Like sometimes I can eat a serving or two, which is more like a bowl or two, which is really like 5 or 6 servings, just saying. But okay, let's say I could stop at one bowl or two bowls. Other times I'll eat the whole bag, right? So my recommendation is find the treats that you feel like you can control portion size and not feel deprived. So if one week you are able to have the chocolate chips and keep them in the house and have just a little bit, awesome. And then if you find you're struggling with them, I would probably recommend removing them from the house and getting a different sweet treat that you can better portion control. For instance, even this past week, I had a small group and they provided brownies, and I had a brownie, but I only had one brownie. And why is that? That's because they served out the brownies. I would have probably gone back for at least one more, but they were like serving them. So, I wanted to be polite. I didn't want to go get another brownie. But if I had that pan of brownies at home, I would have definitely eaten half the pan of brownies. And I know that about myself. There's things for me like making a pan of brownies. I'm probably not going to do that at home for myself. I'm going to eat them way too fast. Chocolate chip cookie dough. I do not keep that in the house because I know myself. And not only do I love chocolate chip cookies, warm and fresh and gooey and delicious, but I also love the dough. And I will straight up hit up the fridge just to eat spoonfuls of cookie dough. So those are things I'm like, we don't keep in the house. I just don't. But sometimes, like I said, I can keep, some chocolate chips or different chocolates or whatever. And you just have to know yourself and the season you're in and what is your body and mindset kind of struggling with? Like, are you struggling with those certain food items? And then find the treats that you feel like you can control the portion size better. So for me, like some go-tos that I can portion control better are things like Yasso bars. Those are like the Greek yogurt ice cream bar. And the thing here, like as I've shared before, I'm a volume eater. So I like to feel like I'm having more than like a bite of a sweet treat. That's why also when someone says just have a little bit or just have a bite, I'm like, I don't want just a bite. I want 300 bites. So that doesn't do it for me. Like that's a tease. That is such a tease. So no one likes a tease. So, a Yasso bar, those are a pretty good size and they have a bunch of different flavors. They're not the cleanest thing out there. That's for sure. They definitely have plenty of added sugars in there, but they are like 150 or 160 calories for the whole bar. And sometimes, I can stop at one. Other times I do have like two bars. But even let's say I have two bars, that's like 300 calories. That's not horrible. That's not like break the bank, right? That's not breaking the calorie macro piggy bank. That's like, okay, even if I had two, let's say that was one more than I had planned to have, it's not like I went just off the deep end. Now, let's say I had a bag of chocolate chips and I had multiple servings. Well, we're definitely headed off the calorie deep end, right? And the fats deep end. Or my one of my other favorites right now, Sour Patch Kids. Like that stuff adds up so quick and a serving size is so depressing that, something like a bar, I feel like I can get pretty satisfied. And it's like a higher volume. And I don't feel like I'm doing much damage and I can portion control that. Also, chocolate rice cakes, that's not quite as much, of hitting that real sweet treat, but like something like a chocolate rice cake, they're 50 calories. I think they're maybe 50 or 60 calories per rice cake for the chocolate ones. And again, not like super, super, super clean, but they can help hit the spot. And I could have like three or four rice cakes, and that would be like 150 or 200 calories. So things like that. What's another one? Like popcorn. So you could do, popcorn is like a higher volume, lower calorie option. Also, you're going to get fiber with the popcorn. So you could do, make your own popcorn at home and you could just like lightly salt that if like you're a salt craving person. Or you could even do like kind of like a cinnamon sugar mixture and with a little bit of butter or whatever your coating is to stick it on there. And you could do that. Do watch out because obviously the sugar and the butter calorie wise will add up too. So probably want to measure that out and like portion control that as well. But on top of the popcorn, you could have like that higher volume and that could be helpful and could be nice. So those are just some quick things that come to mind. I had another one for you guys and now I'm blanking. Shoot. But those kind of things are really helpful. So sometimes you can, have the self control. Other times it's just not there, is what I've found. So, like, there's times where I know I just have to keep things out of the house. And then other times that I'm like, no, I can actually portion this and I can just have a serving. Like for instance, my husband and I love cookie cakes. That's like our thing. Like whether it's our birthdays or anniversary, we usually are getting a cookie cake and usually designed, with the icing to say happy birthday, Megan or Justin or whatever. But we love it. And there's sometimes that we crush the whole thing in like one evening. Don't recommend. But there's other times that I can actually portion it out and have like a slice of cookie cake each night until it's gone. So, it's again just knowing yourself. And that's going to be really, really helpful on this journey and tangible for you. So, all that being said, I hope that helps give you some real life advice. I try to make this as digestible as possible. No pun intended, because we're talking about food. But I also, want to give you guys some of the science, some just takeaways. But I know what has worked for me and not worked for me. And I can totally relate to feeling like, cutting everything out is not realistic or you feel deprived. And then you also feel like having a little bit of something is not realistic for you. And that's the direction we want to be able to move in. That's really that food freedom of being able to have that self-control with your food. But it's a process and a journey, and it's not like a linear journey. You're going to have those ups and downs, just like your body and your hormones and all of that fluctuates. That relationship and dynamic with food might fluctuate a little bit too. It'll still continue to improve as you're improving on your journey and you're improving that relationship with food, but don't feel defeated if one week you have lower self-control around food. Just create your environment to be successful. So that week, maybe do get some of those, more tempting things out of the house. Maybe you do eat before you go to your kid's sporting event where there's a ton of crap food and treats and stuff like that, right? You just are setting yourself up for better success with it. So I hope that helps. If you would like to talk more as far as like one on one coaching and you want help with this, you want a coach in your corner, someone who can talk you through this and give you feedback, then please reach out to me and my team. You can actually book a call with me directly if you head down to the show notes. Just scroll down and you can book a free consultation call. Or you can shoot me a message on social media and we can chat. All of my social media handles are in the show notes too. But otherwise, you guys, I'm going to leave it there. And, I'm going to go probably have me a little sweet treat. But anyway, I'll catch you guys on the next episode.